Hello, I'm Thomas Fuller from Omny Law, and in this module we're focusing on managing sickness absence and reasonable adjustments, an area many line managers find particularly challenging. Absence management isn't just about monitoring attendance and then punishing employees for being off. It often involves being considerate of the health and well-being of the workforce, and therefore it requires line managers to consider how they can support a frequently absent employee whilst also understanding their legal responsibilities when it comes to managing employees with long-term health needs. It would be first useful to understand what a disability is for the purposes of employment law before exploring how this ties in with managing sickness absence. Under the Equality Act 2010, a disability is a physical or mental impairment which has lasted or is likely to last 12 months or longer, and the impairment causes the employee to suffer difficulties with their day-to-day activities. These may present as difficulties with an employee's ability to read, write, climb stairs, or even with their ability to attend work at certain times of the day or work for certain lengths of time. When that's the case, employers are under a duty to consider making reasonable adjustments, which you'll be best thinking of as steps that remove as far as possible the difficulties the employee faces because of their disability. When it comes to managing sickness absence, it usually starts when the line manager notices a pattern with their employees' attendance. This may present as frequent short-term absences for various reasons, or their absences may be based on the same or very similar conditions. You should start by talking to the employee. This may be part of a return to work meeting when the employee returns from a period of absence, or maybe during the employee's absence as part of a welfare meeting. In either scenario, the focus should be on understanding the reason for their absence, the nature of their illness or condition, how it impacts them and their work, and for those who are on long-term sickness absence in particular, how long they are likely to be absent for. Once you've discussed all of this with the employee, you'll be in a better position to understand what you, as the manager, can do to help the employee possibly reduce the number of absences if the issue is short-term and repeated absences. Whether the issue is short-term or longer period of absences, understanding the issues with the employee's health will also help you explore ways in which you can support the employee by way of reasonable adjustments, particularly for those who would be considered disabled under the Equality Act. Now, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to reasonable adjustments. One adjustment for one person does not mean that the same step or series of steps would achieve the same result for someone else. It is therefore best to approach the issue of adjustments with an open mind and on a case-by-case basis, which may require you to consider being flexible on the person's hours of work, the duties they perform, time off work, a phased return to work, whether their work output should be reduced in comparison to other people's, amongst many other things. When deciding on what steps to take, it is always good practice for the employer to ask the employee what adjustments they think would help them carry out their work, or what adjustments would help them get back to work if they have been off for a longer period of time. On the one hand, the employee is possibly in the best position to know what would help them, as they are the ones who would know their limitations and difficulties. But do not rely on the employee's comments alone. Ultimately, the onus is on the employer to decide what adjustments are reasonable to make, and it is on the employer to take those steps, not the employee. It is usually at this point when employers decide, with the consent of the employee, to seek an occupational health assessment or a report from the employee's GP for further information on the employee's health and for guidance on what adjustments could support the employee. If the employee does not wish to provide consent, then the employer should ensure it has investigated with the employee the cause of their absence and what steps could help support the employee. Once the cause of the employee's absence has been identified, and where necessary steps have been identified and taken to support the employee, you should finally keep under a review the successfulness of the adjustments on a regular basis, with a period of review agreed with the employee, which may be weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. During these reviews, you should discuss with the employee whether they believe the steps are working and enabling them to fulfill their duties, or whether alterations need to be made to those adjustments. It may be that new adjustments need to be made, and the next review will focus on whether those new adjustments are working. When dealing with sickness absences and reasonable adjustments, it is important not to make assumptions about the person's health. Most managers will not be medically qualified to comment on the truthfulness or accuracy of what the employee says about their health and the impact that it has on them. So it is important to seek medical input where necessary and then make decisions based on the totality of the evidence about their health. Unless you have reason to believe an employee is faking an illness or lying about a period of absence being sickness related, you should treat sickness absence as a capability matter. The legal test for establishing misconduct is different, as explored in the Handling Disciplinary Issues Fairly video. Finally, it is important that all conversations with the employee or decisions taken on adjustments are appropriately recorded in writing. If absence becomes long-term, where a disability may be the cause of the person's absence, medical advice is unclear, or where there is a risk of having to terminate the person's employment, it is always best to seek HR or legal support. Thank you very much for watching, and you can find more practical tools for managing sickness absence on the Breathe Growth Academy.